All right, I'm really happy to be able to celebrate the International Day of Transgender Visibility that's coming up on March 31st here in our congregation. And this is a day that is all about celebrating the accomplishments of the transgender and gender nonconforming people and raising awareness of work that still needs to be done for trans issues. And so I know the UUCC, we're really find this something we're passionate about and want to engage the work and create that kind of welcoming spirit and community that is so much a part of this day. And being a place of spirituality that is focused on providing a space for visibility, for welcoming spirit, for acceptance, a place where we are encouraging each other to be our authentic selves. Brene Brown says that authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we actually are. And that is such an important part of who we are at the UUCC. I'm really happy to be able to welcome a great friend all the way from Santiago, Chile. Andres Herrera is joining us today to provide some beautiful words and insights on the spirituality of transgender visibility. Andres is in Santiago waiting on visa to return to the US as he came for training about 5-6 years ago in Columbia, South Carolina, in chaplaincy, waiting to come back and continue work with a church in Houston while he works on finishing seminary and finishing endorsement through the Diocese of the Episcopal Church, and eventually getting back into a career in chaplaincy and possibly chaplaincy education. So I am so happy to spend some time with you today, Andres. And so you ready to get started?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you to all of your community in South Carolina. Um, I visited there when I was there in 2015, so it's really good to be back online and connect with you all today.
Great. Well, we're going to just jump in and get us started with maybe asking you, Andres, as we get ready to celebrate on March 31st, the International Day of Visibility. What visibility means to you? What's the importance of visibility, the spirituality of visibility?
You know, I haven't always celebrated this day because I haven't always been involved in the LGBTQ community. But for me personally, um, when I was growing up and I was trying to figure out who I was, and you know, everyone told me I was one thing and I felt another way. I didn't know that there were trans people. Uh, I didn't know anyone in real life. I didn't have anyone in my community who was trans. Um, so I didn't know that that was a possibility or that I could transition and that I could have a happy life. Um, so it was really difficult because I couldn't really imagine a future for myself because I couldn't see people like me.
Hmm.
Um, so when I finally discovered that there were trans people and that's what was happening with me, that I could transition and that was an option, and that the people that I saw, this was online. I found this information online. A friend somehow sent me a link to a group, and it was a group of trans men in the US. Um, and they would share, their experiences and their journeys and support each other through this group. And that's when I saw that that was me. I just didn't know that was me, but I saw it there, and I finally had language to explain who I was. So it was very meaningful because that opened the door for me to say that I'm trans, to be able to explain to my family, and to be able to start the process of transitioning. And it's also important to say that that looks different for every trans person. Some people choose to medically transition, like I have. Other people don't want that, and other people don't necessarily have the access to do that. So I think it's also important that what transition means for each trans person is different. But the fact that to see yourself um, in media, to see yourself in public spaces or with public figures or in the church setting or a congregation setting, all that um, helps trans people to know that they are welcome, that they can live fulfilling lives in all aspects of society.
Yeah. I know you're, um, as a friend, a deeply spiritual person. So I just wondered, as you were talking about your process of transitioning, process of seeing yourself for who you are, becoming who you see yourself to be, and then letting that be visible. Can you talk a little bit about some of those steps in that process for you, some of the milestones spiritually, and becoming who you see yourself to be?
Sure. You know, religion wasn't really like a big part of my life growing up. It was there because my family would say that they're Catholic, but we didn't really go to church or had any specific faith traditions or rituals that we would engage. Um, and I think in a way that was positive because I didn't grow up with any negative uh, comments or upbringings related to religion and how trans people fit into that. But in terms of spirituality, I think for me, when I started to explore my faith and when I started to want to have a relationship with God, it was really meaningful that God would see my heart. When I had not started my transition at that point, or I was in the beginning of my transition. Um, but it was still difficult for me because at that point, I had not started medically transition, so people would still not always see me as male when I was in public. So that was difficult for me. Every time I would be in public spaces, I wasn't sure how people were seeing me. So the fact that God would see my heart, and that would be more important than the outside or that what people saw, that really spoke to me in an important way. That it wasn't the outside wasn't important necessarily, or what other people saw wasn't important, but it was what God saw in me, and in a way that God could see me as the person that I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be really important for especially spiritualities that involve a belief in God or a higher power, to believe that higher power sees you for who you are and mirrors who you see yourself to be. Whether you have that or not in your theology, whether it's a theistic or non-theistic spirituality and theology, we all really need community, and opportunities to be seen and known in community. So I wonder about some of your experiences in faith communities, probably some not some good experiences as well along the way, and maybe your process of finding a spiritual home.
Yeah, you are right. Community is very important because we need each other. We cannot just live by ourselves in an island, even if we want to. But we need other people. And like I said, I didn't really have many experiences growing up in the church, but what I knew of the Catholic Church was that I was not gonna be welcome there as an LGBTQ person. Like I didn't really need to go to church to know that. They have made it very clear in public, especially in Latin America, which is where I had these experiences. So I think the church in Latin America, the Catholic Church, or even the majority of Protestant churches are still much more conservative than in the U.S. Um, so I knew that I was not really gonna be welcome there, so I didn't even try to to be in that space, and I didn't feel a deep connection either. So it wasn't a loss for me in that sense. But um, when I started to explore my faith, and I think it's important to say that I was able to do that once I felt at home with myself. Like I
Mm.
was able to look for that spiritual home once I felt at home with myself as a man and with my body. So that was important, that I could feel at home with myself. And then I had space, like mental space and emotional space, to really look for that spiritual home. And I got invited to a Baptist church, and I had never been in a Protestant church, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I really enjoy the service. I really enjoy the people and the way that they talked about having this relationship with God, which was something new to me.
Mhm.
Um, but with time, I quickly realized that even though they were not publicly saying that they were not gonna accept trans people, they would talk about LGBTQ community a lot as people who are sinning, or people who are going against God, or they have to change what they're doing. So I knew that that was gonna be a problem, and it was. I decided to talk to one of the pastors there because I was in the process of joining that church, and I felt like, well, if I'm gonna be a member, I want them to know me fully. I don't
Mhm.
have anything to hide, and I don't see anything wrong. But they didn't agree, so I left that church, and I wasn't really sure what to do next, because I didn't know of any church that was inclusive or welcoming in any way. So what I did was just like, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to talk about this in church. I don't want to lose that part of my life, the spiritual part, but I know that I cannot talk about who I am fully, which was difficult. It wasn't what I wanted. And the more I got interested in serving and doing ministry and becoming more involved in church, that became more difficult.
Mhm.
But thankfully, um, someone told me about clinical pastoral education here in Chile. They told me about chaplaincy, and I really didn't know anything about it. But I thought, well, it sounds like something that maybe I would like, uh, to help people, to be with people, and I was always interested in healthcare, so that appealed to me, and I decided to apply to all the CPE programs in the U.S., except in Florida or Alaska, or I think Texas maybe, which is funny because I ended up going there at some point. But so I did that, and that's when things changed for me, in the sense that I going to the US, going to South Carolina gave me the opportunity to see that there were other churches that were welcoming and inclusive of LGBTQ people.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up in the Episcopal Church. Um, and it was really a relief. I felt very relieved that I didn't have to hide any parts of myself, or that I didn't have to divide myself depending on where I was or who I was with. Um, so that was very, very important, to feel at peace and at home, and to find a community who, it's not like I want to talk about being trans every day or every second or every opportunity, but just knowing that I could do that with the people there, and that it was not going to be a problem. That was enough for me. And that really helped me, and really encouraged me also to continue in ministry, because I didn't know exactly if I was gonna keep pursuing that if I didn't find a community that could support me.
Sure. And I definitely think it's beautiful the way that you just said, Andres. For you to find a spiritual home, you had to be at home within yourself, and that's just so well put. And having had you in our program here in the CPE program, and just fortunately being able to make the connection and work on the visa and bring you here to Columbia, South Carolina. And I still have memories of you coming on that day, like we were talking about earlier, going to the State Museum and moving into Columbia, South Carolina, of all
Yeah.
places. So we just really enjoyed having you here for that year. And I know, having walked with you on that journey, that a lot of the work of coming at home and being at home with yourself and healing your a sense of self came in that year that you were here. And I just wonder, at this point, have you reached a point of feeling like that you no longer have to justify your existence in any setting?
Yes, I mean, definitely, I'm really thankful to you and to the program at PubMed. Well, it's no longer PubMed Health, it's
Right.
Prisma Health now.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm really thankful because you gave me an opportunity. I had lots of other programs who said, no, you don't meet this requirement, or no, this are not, we don't know what to do with international students. And I didn't expect that a program in a smaller place would know how to go to that process and be open to that. So I'm really thankful that that happened. And my experience there was really meaningful and really transform my life in very positive ways. But yes, going through that process and you know with during the residency, sharing with my peers about my transition and talking with them, and being, for a lot of them, being the first time that they met a trans person, and having those conversations was very important. um, and at some point I just said, I don't really need to keep um, having to give all this information for people to
Mm-hmm.
believe me,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that was what I had to do a lot of before transitioning, or in the beginning. I felt like I had to convince people that I was trans, that
Mm-hmm.
that was something that is real, and that and that for all these different reasons, I kind of have to make them, convince them, or make them believe that what I was saying was the truth. Because in the beginning, a lot of people were telling me, "Oh, how do you know that that's who you are?" And I was like, "Well, I just feel it. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot explain it any other way. Besides, I've been feeling it forever,
Yeah.
and this feeling doesn't really go away." So I did a lot of that, and finally, through being there in Colombia, I felt like, I don't really have to do that anymore unless I want to, or unless I feel that giving more information would be helpful. But it's not necessarily a necessity anymore, and that was very important because I don't know. I also don't feel like I have to prove to people that I'm trans, or I'm not gonna get into arguments about, the Bible says this or it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say this, or if that's what they believe, then that's what they believe. I'm not gonna try to convince them. And I think if I have in a relationship they can change their perspective, then that's great. And if it doesn't change their perspective, well, that's okay. I'm not gonna continue to do all this work for them.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And as we're wrapping up our time here, speaking to this faith community here at the UUCC, I just wonder uh, what hope you have for faith communities to be able to lead the way, and maybe what hope you have for the greater culture around trans visibility?
Well, I know that you all are doing lots of great things there. And I think, just even that we're having this conversation and that you are having this service, that's already like a lot more than many congregations that I know. So I think if continuing to have conversations, continue to learn about the issues that trans people are dealing with, um, we know that especially for trans people of color and transgender women,
Mhm.
the rates of discrimination are so high in the US, but I'm sure everywhere in the world also. Um, and I think also the fact that in the UU congregations, the trans people can serve at all levels. Trans people can become ministers, and that's something that gives me lots of hope that more people, more trans people, and more cis people will see that transgender people can be at all levels in all the different communities that they are a part of, and that's the job of creating visibility. Just having trans people in more spaces, in more leadership positions, giving people the opportunity. So I'm really hopeful about that in the US. And I think in Latin America, things are changing. It's much more slow, the process, but
Mhm.
we have seen progress in the last years. For example, here in Chile, there's now a gender identity law that you can change your name and your gender with a simple administrative process. It's no longer like a complicated process that you have to hire a lawyer
Mm.
and have all these legal procedures. It's no longer that. So that's been a step here in moving towards a country that is more inclusive and welcoming.
Mm.
So I think even if it's slow, there's a lot of progress that is happening.
Well, thank you. And I got to say, my friend, it's great to talk to you. And I will just say back to you that you represent that hope as well in the work that you're doing and your vulnerability and authenticity, willing to share and articulate your journey, your spiritual journey, your personal journey. And so I really appreciate you sharing with us and being with us today.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you all. I'm happy to keep talking at any time and to join you for more conversations about this or any other topic. So thank you.
All right. Well, great. Thanks.
Thank you.